Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range, cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You'll never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything you need. Your mind's got the key ingredient, it's belief. They're deceived with the negativity, but I just slide right by that energy. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
What's up, everyone? It's your boy Timbo again. Welcome to another episode of Timbo Unchained. This is episode 4. Today I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Those of you who do know me know that I am really interested in the criminal justice system, mainly wrongful convictions. This is going to be a little tough for me because it really just pisses me off when I hear about things like this. One of my favorite podcasts is called Wrongful Conviction Podcast. It's the Innocence Project. They basically go around and they get people exonerated for for crimes that they didn't commit, or if they have been convicted for too long of a sentence for something. This one really disturbed me when I heard about it. Not only was this gentleman wrongfully convicted, in my opinion, he never should have stepped foot in a jail. He was defending his family. They locked him up for it. And not only that, the prosecutors who got him convicted, they withheld evidence from the defense, they withheld evidence from the jury, and also after this incident, one of them became a judge. They were doing this to make their careers, and that's why they did it to this gentleman by the name of Keith Washington. Let's get right into some things about Keith Washington from when he was a younger man. Keith was born to a single mother who worked the cotton fields of the Deep South to make a better life for her family. Keith has 8 brothers and sisters and was the first of his family to attend and graduate from college. Keith joined the Army as an enlisted soldier right out of high school. While stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, he recognized the importance of an education and decided then that college was the next step. He attended college and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Northwestern State University, where he joined his Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Keith majored in criminal justice and social work and volunteered at the Crane River Children's Hospital, helping children not much younger than himself, teaching, coaching, and mentoring at-risk youth, believing that he could be a positive influence and make a difference in their lives. His desire to have a positive impact on the lives of others led him to the U.S. Army Officer Corps. He worked his way up through the ranks and within 5 years was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Infantry Branch. He served in the U.S. Army for over 25 years, active duty and reserve, both on the home front and during conflicts overseas. He speaks 5 languages and has attended some of the foremost military schools in the country. He's a decorated veteran and proud to have served. When he got out of the military, he continued his public service as a Prince George's County, Maryland police officer, where he served for over 17 years. During the entire span of his law enforcement career, he never once fired his weapon other than for required training. During his tenure as a police officer, Keith was also involved in the community in numerous other capacities, serving on various boards and commissions, visiting and speaking at schools and community service organizations. While he was in the military, he received an award for valor, for bravery and courage in the line of duty when he entered a burning building and pulled 3 children from the fire. Wow. All right. So let's recap that. 25 years in the Army, active duty and reserves, and then 17 years as a decorated police officer. All right, so now we're going to skip ahead to the night of January 24th, 2007. On that night, Keith Washington, his wife, and 6-year-old daughter were at home having dinner while waiting for the delivery of bed rails that they had purchased from Marlowe Furniture. The delivery was late, and when the Washingtons called the furniture store to get a status, they were eventually told the delivery was still coming. 2 men arrived in a Marlowe delivery truck. Mrs. Washington and their daughter remained in the kitchen while Keith answered the door. Keith let them in and proceeded to lead them upstairs to the master bedroom where the bed rails were to be placed. Keith let them in. After reaching the master bedroom and noticing that White... Oh, I'm sorry. I need to tell you the names of these people. One was named Robert White, and the other was named Brandon Clark. These are the delivery guys. Let's see. After reaching the master bedroom and noticing that White was not with them, but had instead gone into their daughter's bedroom. She was 6. Keith got an uneasy feeling and told them to leave. Mrs. Washington overheard the commotion, and she looked up the stairs and witnessed the 2 men, Brandon Clark, who stood 6'7", 330 pounds, and Robert White, who stood at 6'2", 280 pounds. They were assaulting Keith, who's 5'9", 155 pounds. Within a few seconds, as Mrs. Washington turned to run for her daughter to get out of the house and call for help, she heard shots. She grabbed her daughter and the phone and ran out of the house, dialing 911. The 2 men assaulting Keith had been shot. Brandon Clark later died. Robert White survived. In a nearly 2-week jury trial in February of 2008, Keith was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of first-degree assault, and 2 counts of use of a handgun in the commission of a felony. In total, he was sentenced to 45 years in prison. The 45-year sentence Keith received was more than twice what the Maryland sentencing guidelines would have imposed on him at 5 to 20 years. Pissed off yet? Now we're going to look at some of the evidence that supports Keith's stories. Robert White's DNA was found on Keith's service revolver, an indication that White attempted to grab the gun during an altercation. None of the spent shell casings recovered by the evidence technicians immediately after the shooting were located inside or even near the master bedroom where Robert White said Keith was standing when he shot. In fact, the shell casings were recovered from the middle of the upstairs hallway and the hall bathroom, consistent where Keith said the altercation took place and exactly where Stacy Washington said she witnessed the 2 men assaulting Keith. Gunshot residue report showed that the shooting had occurred at close range, whereas White said it was at a distance of about 8 feet. Clark's pant fibers were found on Keith's vest, consistent with Keith claiming that he was kicked during a struggle. 9 first responders on the scene testified that Keith had swelling and bruises on his face and neck, consistent with being in a fight. Keith's watch was broken and torn from his wrist during the struggle. Expert testimony in a later proceeding showed that the nature of the damage to the broken watch was indicative of the watch being ripped off Keith's arm. All those things actually supported Mr. Washington's version of events more closely, that there was a combat-type situation, a fight in the upstairs hallway, rather than Mr. White's version of events as he detailed in his statement. Now we're going to learn a little bit about this asshole, Robert White. So White, the surviving delivery man, was the state's main witness in its case against Keith Johnson. White had at least 12 convictions at the time of trial, including a first-degree sexual assault conviction in 1995 in South Carolina, for which he spent 10 years in prison and had to register as a sex offender. First of all, 10 fucking years isn't enough for a fucking sex offender. You know what the fucking cure for sex offenders is? Fucking bullet. Save us our fucking taxpayer money. Fuck those guys. White had at least 10 more arrests in addition to those 12 convictions before the trial, and has had 2 more arrests after the trial for breaking into the homes of 2 more women, one where he pushed the victim down on the floor and another where he grabbed her by the shoulders and threw her into the door in the hallway. Robert White was never a hired employee of Marlowe Furniture, the company that Keith had hired to deliver the bed rails to his house on the day of January 4th, 2007. On the morning of January 24th, 2007, Marlowe Furniture employee Brandon Clark, the dead one, picked White up in a delivery truck on the side of a road near Popeyes. There was a customer at the Marlowe Furniture that had an interaction with these guys, and he said that White seemed to be either high or intoxicated, and he was very relieved that my wife was not home alone when they arrived. After being treated at the local hospital the night of the incident, White was found to have cocaine in his system. He then filed a $400 million lawsuit against Keith and Prince George's County, which was dismissed. His story constantly changed and was often false. In his civil trial testimony, White admitted to several perjured statements in his grand jury testimony. So, he's a fucking criminal, and he's a fucking liar. Yet he was the state's star witness. How does this happen? Next, we're going to learn about the prosecutors. These fucking pieces of shit. Throughout Keith's trial, the state, led by prosecutors and assistant state's attorneys William Mumau and Joseph Wright, and overseen by state's attorney Glenn Ivey, consistently pursued an improper line of questioning, mischaracterized and lied about the evidence and testimony, as well as the criminal history of Robert White, and made numerous improper remarks that were consistently beyond the scope and latitude used to secure a just and proper verdict. The state is specifically barred from such conduct and from making improper statements solely for the purpose of producing a verdict that on its face lacks both a factual and evidentiary basis for its conclusion. There were not just 1 or 2 remarks, but a pattern of remarks made by the prosecutors they knew to be improper, false, and misleading that were sustained by the judge. There were at least 31 false and misleading statements made throughout the trial that were objected to and sustained to intentionally poison and mislead the jurors. During Keith's cross-examination by the state, there were 22 sustained objections for improper questions ranging from facts not in evidence, mischaracterization of evidence and testimony, misleading statements, improper impeachment, and general inadmissible statements and questions on the part of the state. During the closing argument alone, the trial court sustained 9 additional objections to statements made by Joseph Wright that were improper. Prosecutors are specifically barred from making these remarks during closing arguments that addressed facts not in evidence and making statements intended to generate unfair prejudice against the defendant. So here's some information about what the jury didn't know, because it wasn't known by the jury. It was withheld from them by the prosecutors through a series of lies and manipulation of the facts and evidence in order to garner a fraudulent verdict. The jury didn't have information about Robert White, and because of that, an innocent man was sent to prison for 45 years for defending himself and his family against a known career criminal. What the jury didn't know: Robert White did not then and had not ever worked for Marlowe Furniture Company. He was picked up on the side of the road the morning of the incident and brought to the Washington home high on cocaine. Robert White broke into a woman's home and sexually assaulted her prior to the incident with Keith Washington. The jury never knew this. Robert White was not registered in the Maryland sex offender database as required by Maryland state law. Robert White denied under oath in the grand jury that he was a sex offender. The prosecutors allowed him to do so, even knowing that he was testifying falsely under oath. Robert White had previous convictions for assault and battery, unlawful entry, larceny, receiving stolen goods, attempted third-degree burglary, grand larceny, pointing a firearm, first-degree burglary, and domestic violence. Robert White also had over 20 additional arrests for crimes ranging from peeping Tom to attempted murder. They didn't know that Brandon Clark's teeth had been knocked out. Clear evidence of an altercation, even though Robert White testified that neither he nor Clark were ever close enough to Keith to touch him. During the trial, Assistant State Attorneys William Mumau and Joseph Wright made numerous false and misleading statements about the evidence. Wright also allegedly openly bragged that this case would make him the next state's attorney. He campaigned for that office, but fortunately, the piece of shit lost. The assistant state attorneys allowed Robert White to testify falsely at least 30 times in his grand jury testimony. They allowed White to testify at least 24 times falsely in his criminal trial testimony, essentially perjuring his entire criminal trial testimony. White even later admitted in the civil trial that his criminal trial testimony was false. The jury was also not told that at the time of this incident, Brandon Clark, the asshole who died, was 6'7", 330 pounds, and was awaiting trial in another case for assaulting a female acquaintance. The attorneys intentionally omitted informing the grand jurors and criminal jury of the numerous convictions of Robert White. He lied about the facts that Keith Washington testified to. 9 witnesses gave written statements that described the injuries they personally saw on Keith the night of the incident. The state's attorneys had those witnesses' statements in their possessions, but they never released them to the jury. The state's attorneys misrepresented the 911 call, saying Keith refused to tell the 911 operator how White and Clark got into his home. Keith clearly stated on the 911 call that he let them in, not knowing that they were not legitimate delivery men. Robert White's media statement he issued to the Washington Post was fabricated. They printed it, and 2 million people read it as though it was fact. The state's attorney, Joseph Wright, in his closing argument, lied to the jury, telling them that Robert White had only one criminal conviction. This was done deliberately to mislead the jury about who Robert White really was. This is crazy. This happened to a highly decorated, not only military man, but police officer. Now, if this can happen to Keith Washington, who did nothing but try to protect himself and his family, when these two criminal pieces of shit, two giant criminal pieces of shit, physically giant men, attacked him, had he not had his weapon, had he not had his service revolver on him that day, his service gun, they probably would have beat him to death. And who knows what they would have done to his wife and kid. Because remember, this White guy went into his daughter's bedroom. And that's why he confronted them. And they proceeded to try to beat the shit out of him. Again, thank goodness he had his gun on him. Because we would be telling a whole different story. All right. There is a documentary on this. It's called Making an Exoneree 2020, The Story of Keith Washington. It's available on YouTube. It's about 8.5 minutes long. It's not too crazy long or anything. It's really good. I just watched it right before I did this episode. So something that the silver lining to this, if there could be one, Keith Washington got his sentence reduced in 2021. So from 2008 to 2021, so what's that, 13 years? He was in prison for defending his family. Now, his sentence was reduced. He's out, but he should have never been in there for that long. I mean, this is someone, again, he was protecting his family like you would do, like I would do. I'm 5'1". I weigh 125 pounds. If those two big dudes came into my house, I would have no choice but to shoot them. And I box. You know, I can throw hands a little bit. I would shoot those big motherfuckers down if they entered my home and started acting like that, attacking me or my wife or my fucking cat if I had one. I would not care. Don't enter another person's house and try to assault them. They saw a smaller person and they thought they could take advantage of him. And guess what? He brought his equalizer with him. And now in Florida, you can conceal carry without a permit. So keep that in mind if you ever decide you want to start breaking into people's houses or attacking people in the street, because you never know. So he finally got released. And believe it or not, Keith Washington is now running for a government office. I don't remember which government office he's running for. It could be a senator or governor. I don't know. But since his release, he is still fighting for to clear his name. And he's also helping other people who have been in similar situations. So my point of this podcast, guys, is look, if this can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. You should listen to the podcast Wrongful Convictions. It's on Spotify. I believe you can find it on YouTube too. They literally have hundreds and hundreds of cases similar to this. Some of these people are convicted of murder, and there's no evidence to prove that they did it. It's because corrupt cops, corrupt lawyers, corrupt judges, people trying to expand their career because a W is a W for them. And it doesn't matter if that person's innocent. And most of the time, even whenever they're found out that they lied on the stand, that they withheld evidence, that they planted evidence, that they blah, blah, keep it on going, nothing happens to them. In fact, a lot of them get fucking promoted. Much like this prosecuting attorney that is now a judge. Do you want a judge that falsifies information and that deliberately put someone in prison knowing that they were wrong, lying about everything? Is that the type of judge we want? That bitch needs to go to jail. All of them. Remember, Innocence Project. Keith Washington also has there's a website. It's called oneinnocentman.org. And you can go through and you can find all this information that I just read to you. Everyone just, like I said, it can happen to anyone. All it takes is one asshole judge, one asshole cop, one asshole prosecutor. They rely on eyewitness testimony. That's especially cross-racial eyewitness testimony is something like 85% inaccurate, because racist-ass white people think that all black people look alike. Stupid. These people do this to enhance their careers, and it doesn't make sense. Those aren't the people that we need to be in those positions. And I don't think it should be 3 strikes and you're out for these people. One time you're busted, you go to jail. And if your misconduct resulted in somebody getting a life sentence, guess what? You should get the life sentence. And they should be released. First smile of the fucking podcast. It really upsets me, things like this, as you can tell. But I will be posting more cases like this. I would like to do them a little bit few and far between because I like to have fun and be happy. But this one was something that I felt like I needed to talk to you guys about and explain this situation because it's complete bullshit. And I think that we can all see that now. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.